Hey everybody, welcome to Sound Bombing. I created this show for people who want to experience a radical, life-changing journey through the sounds of my diverse guests. I hope that each sound you hear on this show will strengthen your faith, encourage your dreams, and challenge you to awaken the greatness within you.
Drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We come to drop the bomb. Drop the bomb.
This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Lamar Darnell Shields.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Let me start all over again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to my show. I am Dr. Lamar Darnell Shields, the creator of Sound Bombing. And my goal with this show is to introduce you to people with ideas that will help you unlock your full potential. I want you to know that you have the power within you to do something well and do it like no other person. You have the power of original creation. You are in a world of your own. You can, to a certain degree, develop and enlarge that power so that it would bring you happiness, money, prestige, enlarge that power that will bring you all these things, just like last week's guest, Dan Polino. If you missed that show, you missed a treat. Dan talked about health and healthcare and wellness, and he talked about what's going on in the country as it relates to wellness and healthcare and taking care of yourself. And today is no different with our amazing person who's sitting there looking at you, all beautiful Jen Thornton, and we're going to introduce her shortly. But if you're new to the show, yay, welcome to the best hour online. Yes, I'm bold enough to say it. Welcome to the best hour online, or hour and 15 minutes. And if you are an old head, thank you for coming back. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for all the responses, the feedback, everything that you're sharing with us. And so my new people, we always start out with our 3 breaths. And I want you to get yourself in a comfortable position. And that typically means take your shoes off if you feel comfortable. If you're driving, do not take your shoes off. If you're driving and you want to pull over for this time, you can do that. But if not, come back and play it later. And for those that are old heads, my OG bombers, you know we ask you to put your hands on your lap, palms facing up, because this is almost a position of receiving, because today I am going to give you a gift, and my great guest is going to give you a gift. So let's start with our 3 breaths. So we're going to slowly close our eyes. Everything is soft, our face, our eyes, our cheek, bones, everything is soft. And like my 3rd graders used to tell me, sit up, sit back, roll your shoulders back and relax. And we're going to start with our first breath. Inhale. Hold it for 3 seconds and exhale out of our mouths. One more time, 2 more times. Inhale for 5 seconds through our nostril. Hold it for 5 seconds. Exhale. The last one, we're going to go for 10 seconds. Inhale through our nostrils. Exhale through our mouths. What do we call that, bombers? We call that the breath of life. And we like to start our day with our breath, that abundance. I always tell people, when you win the morning, you win the day. Today is no different. So let's get down to it. The talent function is one of the fastest evolving functions in business today. Bringing an abundance of workforce insights, talent development, knowledge, and cultural wellness to the table, the impact of human resources in organizational success has evolved from peripheral to pivotal. Enter the talent strategy, one of your organization's greatest assets. In fact, how you structure, hire, develop, and engage your workforce can be the single most critical leverage point that sets your organization apart in the race for top talent. With the constant rate of change, what does a modern talent strategy look like, and how can businesses more effectively use it to achieve organizational objectives? Well, our next guest, Jennifer Thornton, will give us key elements of a high-performing talent strategy to help ensure that you have the right people with the right skills and the right roles at the right time to drive results. Who is Jennifer? I'm so glad you asked. Jennifer has developed her expertise in talent strategy and leadership professional development over an existing over 20 plus year career as an HR professional. She's led international teams across China, Mexico, the UK, and the US to expand into new markets. That means that she's had some food all over the country, has an inquisitive taste buds, managing franchise retailers and developing key strategic partnership, all while exceeding business objectives and financial results. And who does not want financial results, especially during this pandemic? Well, the rapid growth of her consulting firm, 304 Coaching, has been largely due to Jennifer's unconventional approach to building innovative workforce development solutions for companies who are facing breakthrough growth and accelerated hiring patterns. She is a sought-after business strategist, and so sought after, we were able to get her to join us in the bomb shelter because she specializes in startups and large value-based organizations. Jennifer Thornton, welcome to the Sound Bombing community. How are you today?
I am wonderful, and thank you so much for having me.
Well, thanks for deciding to hang out with us. We are so honored that you decided to hang out with us. Now, the name of your company is the 304 Coaching. Explain to me the significance of 304.
You know, it's interesting. When I decided to go out on my own and create a company, before I had really even put it all together, I got a phone call from someone who knew I was doing it and said, I need you in my office to talk to my CEO tomorrow. And I was like, I don't even have a name. And, you know, I couldn't think of something that was highly creative. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to go with my lucky number, and my lucky number is 304. It's a combination of important dates. And so I went with it, and it has proved to, you know, be lucky still today.
So for all my gamblers that are out there and you are rolling dice or you are playing roulette or whatever those games that they play, Jennifer, I'm not sure, because I don't like to give any money away, but you gambled on 304 and you are winning. Let our listeners know where you are calling from, and then let's just do a health check-in. How are you doing since this pandemic?
So I am calling in from Dallas, Texas, where I've lived.
Dallas.
Yeah.
You like Dallas.
Dallas is a great place. It's such an interesting and diverse area, and I've loved it. Like I said, I've lived here 20 years. It's been fantastic. And from a health check standpoint, you know, I've been very fortunate through this pandemic. I have had, you know, loved ones and friends, you know, affected, but everyone has recovered. And, you know, I'm lucky that I surround myself with people who are doing their best to not only protect themselves, but protect everyone in the community.
How have you been able to shift your business and your business strategy to keep up with the times?
You know, when this all came up, you know, I remember, and I think we probably all had that mindset, oh, we'll all just stay home for a couple of weeks and everything will be fine. Remember when we all thought that?
Yeah, like it was just a little cold and then we can go back to work
Be
tomorrow.
fine. Yeah. And I remember those first week or two, and, you know, a lot of the projects that I was working on with organizations, we put those on hold because of obvious reasons. And I remember kind of looking at an empty calendar and thinking, what do I do? And I just was like, well, you know, I've got time on my hands, and there's value in time on my hands, and how can I make a difference? And no one wants me sewing a medical mask or, you know, a mask, because that would be bad. That's when we were all like making homemade masks, and I don't have any medical training. So I felt kind of limited. And then I was just like, well, what can I do? And what do I do? Like, what can I offer the universe? And so I decided to put together a kind of mini leadership academy. We do large leadership academies for organizations in our business. And I thought, you know, everyone's at home. Almost everyone I know is on furlough. Why don't I give them the gift of education? And so we did a complimentary 4-session leadership academy. We put together this huge 40-page workbook. Like, we gave away a ton of stuff because we really wanted to make a difference and help people think about how to lead, not only in this time, but, you know, throughout their career. And you know, when you give out into the world, things come back. And I had, you know, over 7 different countries show up, over 1,400, unique logins. And it was such I was thinking I was giving a gift, but it really was a gift back to me. And I met so many cool and interesting people, and it exposed my business to people who didn't know about us, and exposed people to my philosophy on leadership development and how do you actually create change in the world. And so it led to new conversations and new business, and, made a difference in a lot of people and offered them some education that they may not have access to otherwise. And so I think that was the biggest change for me, is really thinking about how do you give back in a time of need. And you can't stop and say, well, I can't do something that can help. You just have to say, what can I do, and go and do that. And I think that was one of our biggest switches as an organization, because that's, how we have continued to work this year, is what can we do and how can we give back?
I love when you said the concept of what can I offer the universe, and then you talked about you have a unique approach to leadership. Let's unpack that first statement. Explain to my listeners what you mean when you say what can I offer the universe, and then I did this, and then talk to us about your unique leadership style and strategy.
Yeah. Well, I think, when I think about what can I offer, during that time period, and throughout just any time of crisis, oftentimes we feel frozen in fear. And, one of my unique points with leadership is really around understanding the neuroscience of the mind, and knowing that fear is a natural occurrence. And so if I had allowed fear to come in, I probably would have sat on my couch and ate a lot of pizza and probably drank a lot of wine. Let's get honest. So, but that's not going to help me. It's not going to help the world. And so, what can I give? Or I always stop and say, what do I have to offer? And no matter how big or small, I know it'll make an impact on someone. And so that's kind of how I look at, giving back to the universe is, we were all given unique talents, and it's our duties to use those and impact society positively with it. And then when I think about, how do I look at leadership in the workplace? I've always been different in the way I lead, and criticized a lot for it early in my career and even later in my career. But I've led from a point of curiosity, a point of application, let's not talk, what are we actually doing? And just, not managing from a point of, I know all the answers, managing from a viewpoint of, it's my job to bring the right answers to the table and help foster those answers and make those answers come into reality.
So Jen, why would somebody criticize that form of leadership? Because you open up by saying, quite often I'm criticized about how I lead an organization now, because I know I love brain development and research. Are you talking left brain versus right brain? Are you talking about female energy versus male energy? Or are you just talking about just Jen, this is the way that I lead, and this is the way I like to lead?
Well, I do have a preference in how I like to lead. When I think of the neuroscience of the brain, I think of, the prefrontal cortex, the primitive brain, actual chemical responses to how we engage with other people and how does that influence us. Because I led in a place of curiosity, I never have led from a competition standpoint. And I grew up in the retail industry, so there was a lot of competition. And so if you didn't wake up and you didn't want to be number one just because you could be number one, it was different. And that's not, I was always a top performer, but I didn't do it because I wanted to beat everyone else. I did it because I wanted to create incredible customer experiences and incredible teams. And so when I didn't want to play the games of competition or play the games of comparison, that felt different to others.
I love that, leading with curiosity. I like. So how does a leader who's not typically leading with curiosity, how can we help them, or how have you been able to help them switch from one form of leadership and communication to another form? Because I think naturally, if we talk about the brain, and if we talk about just ourselves as young people, we are very curious. And, I do a lot of work around boys and work with boys. I love girls as well, but my research is in around boys, in particular boys of color, but just also boys in general. And quite often, we as boys, this is how we engage the world. We use these things. But then also, as children, we use these things. And so when we tell kids to don't touch this and don't do those things, we're sort of taking that curiosity away from them.
Yeah. And if you look at how we were told to lead in the 20th century, it was taking curiosity away too. And it was around, don't let anyone see you sweat. Make sure that you're the boss, you have the answers. Be strong and make sure that you're in control, and don't let anyone push you around. And those types of conversations we have with children, or as people are growing in their career, we're doing the same thing. We're taking curiosity away from them. We're telling them that they have to have all the answers, and none of us have all the answers, especially when you're leading a large organization.
So as a female, because I'm listening to those words that you just said, you got to be strong, you got to be tough, you got to lead, and that feels so male driven. Have you had any challenges with working with other male counterparts when you talk about your style of leadership? And if so, for those women leaders that are out there, how do they circumvent that situation? Do they go through it? Do they go around? Do they go under it? Or do they just pause and say, hey, I'm not going to work that way?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question. And, I work with a lot of executives and many female, and it is a different experience coaching them. And, as a female executive, when I sit at the table, and not only here domestically, where we have some beliefs about a female at the table, I worked in foreign countries where there were very different views on a female with an opinion at a table. And so I think some of the challenges I had were men would want to talk over me, or they would think that I was there to pick up their lunch or clean up the table, or, I was there to take, notes, not meaning it at like a low level, but at the end of the conversation, they would look at me, because often I was the only female, and they would say, you got that right? You'll send us the recap? And I'm like, yeah, I have it. It's all in my head. I'm sure you have the same information. We were both here. Like, you had to kind of stand up for that, because you couldn't be seen. You had to be seen as an equal, and to be seen as an equal, you have to engage equally.
Like, I have friends who are school leaders, let's just say superintendents or principals. And I remember some of these female leaders of these schools, men would say to them, so you're the principal of the whole school? Like, no, I'm just the principal of where the boys' bathrooms are and around the corner where the green hallway is. And I also remember taking some young people to meet the superintendent here in Maryland, Dr. Santelisa's, who I have a lot of respect for. And the young lady, and this had to come from a young lady, and I was so glad that she said it. She said, Dr. Santelisa, when you're in these meetings with these other superintendents, and you locally or nationally, internationally, she said, do you ever feel intimidated? And her response was, well, I'm really smart, like many of them, but I get away with it because I'm also taller than them. And I thought that was a heck of a response, because you did that towering effect of, not only is she smart, a woman, but then this whole level of, I'm looking up to you. But it was a great response. But think about this. This was a girl who was 16 years old, who sees the inequity already at her school, and then have an opportunity to engage a CEO who's running an organization with a budget of maybe about $500 million. And hearing this woman say that, just like you, 16-year-old young lady, I still have challenge with men. And I don't want to just throw men out there, but it also could be other women. It could be other races. It could be other cultures, because you get a chance to travel. You talk in the introduction, I talked about you going to China, Mexico, the UK, and culturally you have to prepare yourself. Correct me if I'm wrong. When you're traveling to these countries, then you have to engage other cultures. How are you as a leader able to then, what I teach young people is called code switching. How are you able to code switch, and what advice do you have for other leaders out there who are about to go to some people may not be traveling, but again, when the ban is lifted, it's crazy. Like, the ban is lifted, we can all get out now. How have you been able to ebb and flow in that process internationally? Then what advice do you have for other people, not just women, but other people when they're going into these international spaces where culturally the game, even though the game is green, but the game is somewhat different?
When I was helping, when I first went overseas to work, I stepped on a lot of landmines, and it was because I just thought that everyone thought, or, if you were going to process something, you would process it like I did as an American. And I was really fortunate that I had amazing people around me that, would say, hey, that's kind of inappropriate culturally. And I didn't do anything, harmful that I meant to. Something in which is interesting, especially if you have a lot of Americans on the call. One time I was teaching a leadership development class, and I kept saying, to be the best leader. And on a break, one of the directors in Asia pulled me aside and said, I just need you to know that you're teaching people to die. And I'm like,
Explain
I don't think I am. But Chinese tradition is, if you're the best leader, you lead the army into battle, so you're more likely the first one to die. And so they don't like to think about being the best. They like to think about being equal and good. And so what a eye-opening experience, not meaning to step on any toes, but I did. And so that was a real moment for me, like those moments to remember, like the sounds and where you're standing and everything about it. It was a real big life changer for me. And so when I started helping other executives move, think about moving or working cross countries, I said, here's the deal. As offensive as anything is to you, you are equally offensive back. So we cannot judge how they may choose to stand in line or how they may choose to respond. We have to understand the context and what they're trying to communicate to us. And so I think that's the big piece of it, is knowing when you go to a new culture, and that's even here in the States, we're very culturally diverse. If you live in upstate New York and you go down to the South and you try to lead and talk the same way, there may be some offensive stuff that falls out. And so we have to always, when we're working in new cultures, stop and think, what do I need to know about this culture to connect? Because the more you connect, the more you learn. And how do you connect and stay curious? And I think that's the biggest piece, is knowing that you just don't know.
Well, we know there's a direct correlation between connection and trust. And with that being said, how do you create trust and safety, not only in the international workplace, but in the workplace in general? Because we're getting so much information, Jen, from all these different places. I don't know who to believe when it comes to COVID. Do I listen to LeBron James, or do I listen to Fauci, or do I listen to Beyonce, or do I listen to my old grandmother who says, boy, you better do this? How do you create trust and safety in the workplace?
Yeah. And it's simplistic and difficult all at the same time. And I know we've all been hearing a lot around psychological safety, and what is that? And psychological safety at its basics is entering into a relationship in the workplace where you can appreciate that person, that you understand their reality and their thoughts and their experiences are theirs. And you're not there to judge them, you're there to understand them. And I think that's where we fall from trust, is because we push our beliefs on others. And obviously, I'm not going to trust you if you don't even want to hear from me or don't care what I have to say. And I tell leaders all the time, the answers to any of your business problems are at the level that's closest to your customer. And typically it's the level they least likely talked to. And they know the answer, but they're afraid to tell the answer because they have been ridiculed or judged or told not to say that, you might get in trouble or someone might get mad at you, all those things. And to build trust, you have to be able to build a place where what anyone says, what their viewpoint is, at least accepted. Right or wrong, it's accepted.
Well, we know we talk about trust and we talk about safety. Well, then how does addiction to being right, because that's connected to trust, how does the addiction to being right negatively influence relationships and results in the business space, but then also just in our personal space in general?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite things to talk to people about because it's very unknown. When we have a substance addiction, whether that's sugar or an illegal substance, anything that we may have prone to be addiction to, when we take that drug, we have a dopamine hit, and dopamine's good. Everyone loves a little dopamine, right?
Yeah, that's why we're married to our cell phones and all social media. We got to get our dopamine fixes every 3 minutes now, probably less than that. Yeah.
Oh, I know, right? 3 minutes is like probably, what we used to do 5 years ago. Now it's every 3 seconds. But
So if you've never heard of dopamine, that's what we're talking about.
yeah. And so that's your feel good hormone. It's that, hey, I like this. It feels good. And what we know about anything that we're addicted to, the more we get it, the more we need to get that baseline of happiness again, which is why we used to be on our phone twice a day. And now we're on it every 3 minutes, if not more, because we need more and more of those hits from our social media or whatever it is. So just like an addiction to a substance, we can become addicted to being right, because when you are right, you also get a dopamine hit. And so if you look at the mind and you put the little neuro things on it, and you just looked at the brain, and you gave someone sugar and they were addicted to it, and you gave someone a substance, they were addicted to it, and someone who was addicted to being right was addicted to it, and you gave them their drug of choice, it would look no different.
So there are people that literally are addicted to being right.
Absolutely. And all of us probably have a little bit of it. Some of us have more.
Somebody's probably listening to my voice like, yes, you asked that question and you know the answer, because you may be the poster child of wanting to be right. I mean, that's definitely not one of my traits. I'm just being facetious. So then how do you handle that type of person?
Yeah. And so when you start to handle that type of person, typically I get in front of them when there's a crisis. Because when you're addicted to being right, you don't see that there's problems until the problem is so bad that you're like, faced with reality. And that could be the downturn of your business. That could be the ending of an important relationship, whatever it could be. So typically, unfortunately, I end up with people when they've kind of passed that point. And so the first thing is I explain it to them, just like I've explained it today. And then we start to get honest about signs. Like, what are the signs of being addicted? And that's when they start to go, oh. And so, some of those signs are at the end of the day, you go home and you are proud of yourself because you told everyone else what to do and you didn't learn anything new. And I ask executives all the time, what did you learn new yesterday about your business that you had no idea about? And if they can't tell me, then they're sitting in their own thoughts and they're not listening to their teams.
And so what are some questions that a person who's addicted to being right, what are some of the questions that they should start asking themselves?
Yeah. So they need to start asking themselves, one, when was the last time I talked to the person closest to the customer? And that can be, whatever that customer is, whatever you're selling, especially if you're in a startup, because a lot of times in a startup situation, the CEO created the product. And so they're really emotionally attached to it, right? And you created something that everyone wants to buy. There's some dopamine hits around that. And so we start with, making sure that they're asking themselves, what did I learn today? Who did I have a conversation with? The other thing is I always have them ask themselves, when was the last time I asked my team what they thought and they responded quickly without thinking?
Great questions. I mean, those are some questions that I need to ask myself as a leader in several categories. There's so many different categories of things that I'm doing. And you're so right. When you're so close to the project and it is your baby and you bringing other people in to almost critique it, it is hard. I'm hoping my listeners are getting this, because this is, as Oprah says, this is an aha moment for me, even as a leader with all the projects that I'm working on, because I know there's certain things that are so close to me that I don't want to hear what anybody else has to say. I'm bringing you to the table. I'm bringing you to the table because you're smart and you're going to push through. So those are some questions I'm going to start asking myself, and I'm hoping my listeners that are out there that are leaders or in the position or almost in the position of leadership, that they start to ask the question. And I also love that you said closest to the customer. There's a guy named Jeff Maiden who was from Chicago, the city I'm from, and Jeff is into sneakers and all this other stuff. But at a very young age, he actually worked for Nike. He was a part of the Jordan brand. So this guy was in the epicenter of Nike being built. And he was really into the boxes, the designs. He was into who touched everything from the custodian to the point of sale. And he had conversations with everybody. So when he started to design this product, he wanted to keep everybody in mind. And that blew me away. He said, even at a young age, when his brother worked at Foot Locker, he would just come in, want to look at the boxes. Now you go back, and if he was my friend in school, I'd be like, man, Jeff is weird. Something's wrong with this dude. But look at him. It paid off, right? He started to ask those questions at a very young age. So where did you learn that from yourself, Jen? Where did that come from you? Because, you know, I'm looking at this guy, Jeff, at a very young age, he picked up on it, and then eventually gets to Nike. Everyone does not get there. Where did you learn that about, to ask those questions about the right, you know, being right, that syndrome, when it comes to safety? You know, what are some things in your life that really prepared you to do this work?
Yeah, I think that it's such a good question. I'm really thinking about that. You know, I had some really tough leaders along the way, and some leaders that necessarily were not really, they were tough on me, but I was delivering. So I didn't necessarily get the wrath of their anger, but I saw other people getting it. And I've always been kind of that one that wants to fight for the underdog for whatever reason. And
Same
so
here.
when I would see, you know, an executive, you know, call names and look at someone and say, are you stupid? Like, I've seen people say that to like a 20-year-old in a retail store. Like, I just get worked up thinking about it. Like, it takes everything I had not to be like, what are we doing here? And I've actually pulled, you know, in my HR executive role, I've actually pulled an executive off of a sales floor before and said, outside, and had a conversation and said, it's not okay the way we're talking. These are humans, and this is not how we do business. And so I just have always had that. And so when I decided to kind of go out on my own, a lot of things happen around just changes in leadership and things that didn't feel right to me. And I was really at a crossroads in my own career and needed a change. And I was very fortunate through research, came across a woman, Judith Glacier, and she had spent 40 years studying the neuroscience of the brain and how does the neuroscience of the chemicals of the brain react in a work environment, and how does that impact business results. And she had a program, and so I studied underneath her for a year and a half, and it just really brought home and I could see the world so differently. You know, I could look back on those situations and understand it in a different way. And then instead of approaching what I do today by, that's just not right, you just shouldn't do it, I do it from a point of science. Like, this is reality. Like, let's really understand how we work, because when we fight against it, that's when bad things happen.
Yeah, I love the fact that you bring in science into your work. I was reading a book today called Biased. Great book, because my work is really centered around equity, inclusion, and diversity. And I love that the writer talks about bringing in science research into the conversation, not just the things that, oh, he thinks this way or she thinks that way or they were born that way, loving to bring in science. So speaking of science, talk to us about the talent cliff. And what is the talent cliff? And then how does a talent strategy then complement a business strategy?
Yeah. So the talent cliff is what happens in organizations all over the world, and very often happens in startups. So what happens is we are a smart group of people. We have this fantastic idea and we're off to the races. And our intellectual knowledge, skills, how we lead, all of that really is at an elevation to where we are from a business revenue standpoint or what we're delivering, because we created it. You couldn't have created it if you weren't at a higher level. Then what happens, because, you know, we are a group of really smart people, the business explodes and it skyrockets up. And then people are chasing the business, but they don't chase and think about what talent development do we need to handle this business? What kind of education do we need? What kind of succession planning, or how do we look at our values, or how do we think about our way to work? And so what happens is the business actually outscales the skill set of the team, because when it starts to happen, the team, when you're in crisis, like the business is growing so fast, you move to crisis management, which is telling people what to do, not listening, moving faster, not exploring, all that stuff. And so what happens then is you kind of go off that talent cliff. Your talent starts to bomb, basically, because you're not leading well. Your top performers will leave you. And what you're left with are the people that are more than willing to say, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. That's not what's going to happen. And then after you kind of go off that talent cliff, then your sales are right behind it.
So at 304 Coaching, these are some of the things that you help individuals and organizations deal with. What are some of the other things that takes place at 304 Coaching?
Yeah. So, we look at, for us, it's really about creating incredible work environments so that people go to work and they're productive and they have purpose and there's business results. And that's all kind of surface and sounds great. But at the end of the day, I know that if I can help organizations have better work environments, I actually create better communities, because those individuals go home to their families and they're better to their family. And then those people go back to school at 10 years old and they had a great evening with their dad at the dinner table because he was in a good mood, and they learn better. And so I look at it more around, how do we create better communities? And to do that, we have to create better work environments. And, when you think about that, there's so much that goes into it, but what we focus on is pre-employment assessment. So really understanding not only the work that needs to be done and how we're going to do the work, but what traits are needed for that work, and ensuring that we're hiring the right skills and traits so someone can be successful. Then once they're on board, we have leadership academies, coaching programs, executive team coaching programs to really help create psychological safety in the work environment so that companies can have a really good time. At the end of the day, if you do this work, you're going to have a lot more fun at work. You're going to enjoy yourself and you're going to be proud of what you're doing in society. And then the business results always come after it. But so often I see organizations, especially startups, they have that business plan, what units, what percentage, what date, like everything is so dialed in. And then you say, well, how does this happen? What people will you deploy to make this happen? And they're deer in the headlight. They never think about the people to actually make that business plan come to life.
I love your intentional approach to how you are working with small and large businesses. I want to encourage all of my listeners to check out 304 Coaching and follow everything that Jennifer Thornton is doing, because this is the way that we become successful in the business. And you're talking about a holistic approach to business. How can our listeners get in contact with you and pick up all the products that you guys have to offer? And if they want to be a coach by you and your team, talk about that process as well.
Yeah, so you can go to 304coaching.com and meet myself and the team. We're all there. And then I'd love to connect with your listeners one-on-one through LinkedIn, and you can find me at Jen Thornton, ACC.
Jen, it has been a pleasure talking to you. I could talk to you forever because I am a business owner and I don't claim to know everything. You actually just lit a fire within me to really think about how I'm engaging my groups of people, because I have several teams that I'm actually working with. So thank you for that. The second part of my show is called the Superbomb Questions. It is one of my favorite parts of the show where I get a chance to ask you some really insightful questions that make you think and make you say, but we want you to respond as quickly as possible. And I know you're going to do great because you've been doing a great job thus far. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So Jen, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word, and it's actually one of my values, is humanity.
What's your favorite quote, or maybe a favorite spiritual Bible verse that you might enjoy?
One of the ones that I've been kind of holding on to lately, especially this year, is from the Dalai Lama. And it goes something like, take into account that great love and great achievement takes great risk.
I love that. What's your superpower?
My superpower is what I want, two different things. What it is I'm really good at synthesizing information. Like I'll read a historic, fiction novel and it'll tell a story and I will be like, oh, this person it connects in really interesting different ways for me.
Love that. What's your spirit animal?
I love animals. I'm a huge animal person. I love owls. I love their peacefulness and their stillness and their ability to just learn and watch.
What brings you to tears of joy?
Building great communities, helping people get up and be happy with their life, and seeing anyone, no matter what they do, wake up and feel fulfilled and excited. Then I adore that.
What brings you to tears of sorrow?
This year, I've had a lot of tears of sorrow around how, as Americans, we've treated each other. So inequality and justice, it's a tough one, and it really hits home for me.
What brings you, what do you wish you had more time to do?
Oh, everything. I wish I had more time to make a difference. I wish I had more time with friends, family, and education. Just continuing to learn and be curious. That's a lot.
It's a lot. No, you and you can do it. You're doing it in what you do. What is one of the best or worst? What is one of the best or most worthwhile investments you've ever made in yourself? It could be money, time, energy, etc.
I think one of the best things I ever did for myself was recognizing I was not cut out for traditional education, but I am an avid learner when it matters to me. And so really spending my time in specific education versus being well-rounded like we're told we're supposed to be.
Final question, Jen. If you were in a Mrs. America talent competition, what would your talent be?
Nothing that would normally be on stage. Something probably really ridiculous. You know what I could do? I could set up a table. You come to me, you tell me what kind of book you want to read, if you're going on vacation and what kind of mood you're in, and I will have a book to recommend for you. I'm ridiculous with book recommendations. So if you need a book, call me. I'll tell you what it is.
Well, speaking of books, what is the book or books you've given the most as a gift and why?
So it's a kind of an unknown book. It's called Same Kind of Different as Me. And it's actually made into a movie at one point. But it is about two gentlemen here in Dallas. Is actually a true story. And they are unlikely friends. One is an incredibly wealthy art dealer, and one is a homeless man. And it's the true story about how they became best friends and how you would think that the rich man was going to help out the homeless man, but that's not how it ended. And man, it hits home. It's a fantastic book.
Well, there you have it, Jennifer Thornton of 304 Coaching in the building. I want to thank you for joining me today. It's been a pleasure to engage with you and have a great conversation. I enjoyed it and I learned a lot about myself. And so go out there, follow her, check out all her information. If you're struggling with your business or if you're doing okay and you really just want some more support, great person to go to. So Jen, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
And I also want to thank my amazing engineer, my Haitian brother, Alexander Blanc, my African sister, Nicole Klempaka, as my producer, and all of you for listening. We could not do this without you. Please, please, please leave a comment. And I'd like to thank my music team, Supremacy, for our theme music, and all of you for listening. Please share me with your friends. Stop being stingy. If you want to know more about me, go to drlds.com, drlds.com. And always believe that something wonderful is about to happen, but some people miss the message because they're too busy looking for the mess. Check us out if you want to support the podcast. Go to Buy Me a Cup of Coffee. You can do that. Thanks for tuning in, and you've been listening to Sound Bombing. Peace.